All right, greetings. Welcome back to Blackbird News, where everything is connected. How y'all doing? Good to see you. Sorry for my lateness. Apologize. Many things going on today, and doesn't mean I'm going to make it up on the back end today. I apologize, but that's just the way it's going to be today. But did want to bring you a couple of things. While we're all here, and we're live on Callin, Rockfin, YouTube, and on Twitter. Watch the show on Twitter. I seem to be getting some views on Twitter, so I guess that's good. Not, not a crazy amount of views, but it seems that people are watching my show on Twitter, so I guess that's cool. A few folks, so maybe that can continue on an upswing, maybe. Hope so. All right. Start with this from Leon Simons. Over 100 days of continuous record surface air temperatures for the northern hemisphere. Temperature is now 1.42 C. Oh, that's awful close to 1.5, isn't it? Now, take into consideration, this is just the northern hemisphere, so it's not the whole Earth, not the whole globe. It's the northern hemisphere, but we live in the northern hemisphere, if most of us do. So this directly affects us. Is my sound okay, guys? Let me know. I can fix it. I can't hear it, so I need you all to tell me whether it's crackling or not. If it is, I can fix it, but I can't hear it, so I don't know when it's happening. Northern hemisphere air temperature. But get this. If you're using the 1850 baseline, we are 2C. 2C above. Using a different baseline. So this is just from basically 1980. 1.42 above 1980 baseline, which is, All right, hold on. Check. All right, that should be better. Give me a sec, y'all. Oh, okay. I guess we're okay. If you are watching on Twitter, please give it a like. Why won't it? Hello. That's funny. A little harder to see now today for some reason. They put it on a. They just. I don't know. Maybe it's because I started late. Well, it's really hard to see today if you're trying to watch today, but it looks like people are watching it, but maybe it's just me. That's cool. But we're literally at 2C in the Northern Hemisphere already. So there's that. That can't be good. For a long-term prognosis. And on top of all that, look where we have been all year. Above average temperatures. I mean, that is just wild. We've been there for mostly starting in July, all the way now, 100 straight days. Will we come back down into this range? I mean, maybe. Hopefully. All right. Let's keep going. There's a hurricane that's going to make landfall right after a tropical storm hit Mexico. Hurricanes making landfall. Headed for Puerto Vallarta. Hurricane Lydia. Just quit asking me about my privacy. I don't really care. Just show me the page. Hurricane Lydia will make landfall tonight in Mexico, north of where Max came from Monday, which brought pretty substantial rains already. So this is back to back. Back to back storms. I guess Max came closer to Acapulco, and Lydia is now coming towards Puerto Vallarta. Lydia is strengthened into Category 3. It will remain an intense hurricane when it roars ashore near Puerto Vallarta Tuesday evening. Excuse me. A hurricane warning is in effect for Las Islas Marias and from Manzanillo to El Roblito. Hurricane conditions are expected within this area through Tuesday night. And I feel like we get a little bit of drift from some of these clouds. Maybe not. Maybe I'm imagining things. Still crackling? Guys? Is that right? Is everybody okay with the sound or no? I watched a little bit of show yesterday on Twitter, and it seemed like the sound was kind of crackling, burn up on Twitter. And I apologize for that. I can't really. It's hard to control on my end because I can't hear it. I don't know what you're hearing. And it's basically StreamYard is the issue. Because it's a browser-based streaming service. This is some flooding from Tropical Storm Max, which gave Mexico some severe flooding in many parts of the state of Guerrero in Mexico yesterday. This video is from Acapulco. Oh, all right. All right. I reset the sound again. So is it working now? Please let me know. I just wanted to avoid I didn't want too much of the show to be filled with crackle because nobody wants to listen to that, right? Okay, great. Thomas Reese says Termination Shocktober is happening in Europe. I don't know. I don't know about all that. Termination shock. I mean, maybe. I mean, we're at 2C. We're at 2C in the Northern Hemisphere above the 1850 baseline. So that's either way you cut it, 1.5 or 2C. That's not good. But they have very warm temperatures happening in October. In Europe, saw that was like in the 80s or close to 80 degrees in England, yesterday, which is super duper rare, not supposed to happen. And as you can see here, many parts of Europe getting some very warm temperatures for the season. All right. Seem to have a lot of issues today with the watching and the viewing and the listening and the stuff like that. Anyways. But we're going to make it. We're going to make it through. This is in Peru yesterday, Puerto Maldonado. Let me show you. How high is the water? About chest high. If you're in Peru. Let's keep going. There's more. I know there's a lot happening in the world, but there's also signs that the Earth is entering a brand new, state of climate. And you may or may not believe it, or it may or may not have any effect on you right now, therefore allowing you to not believe it. But if things keep going the way that they're going, there won't be a lot of chances for people to continue to not feel the effects of this. And so it's going to get harder and harder to avoid. And I don't feel any kind of glee or joy over that outcome or prospect. Not for myself and not for anybody. It just is what it is. At first glance, it seems the recent spike in global temps was similar to 2016. But upon further inspection, the spike in 2016 came many months later at El Nino max. So although much of the spike this year is from the switch from 3 La Niñas to El Nino, something is still missing. And he's retweeting Professor Rahmstorf, who says it's clear that the anomalous high global temperatures of the past 4 months can't be and those temperatures are above the global warming trend. So we're above the trend line. If we were just following the trend line, we would be warmer, but we're actually warmer than we're supposed to be. It can't be explained by El Nino, he says. He's retweeting Leon Simon's global surface air temperature of the past 4 months was crazy high. What's more crazy is that this 4-month average record increase of 0.34 C didn't happen after a strong El Nino, but at the beginning of it. So, could we see higher highs? Watch out for official statements in the coming weeks, he says. So, are we going to see even more of a peak in temperatures? I don't know. You know what, Gene? I have, I mean, there's conflicting ideas around whether the ocean is a carbon source or a sink at this point. I mean, I imagine they're still absorbing CO2, but some people might tell you no. Yeah. All right. Well, there's, of course, always the discussion around the global dimming, lack of aerosols. Again, Leon Simon says, right below this, wondering how shocked that large institutions will be and whether the sulfur termination shock will be mentioned. So he immediately references that. It seems like some climate scientists are just learning about how important aerosols actually are for regional and global climate. Most policymakers have never even heard of the word. I've called this gross negligence, not from the great physical scientists doing the hard work to clearly present the data and uncertainties, but from the IPCC process that eliminated their work from being communicated. The narrow-minded thinking has led the IPCC to exclude the effect of sulfur cooling altogether and to hide the effect of aerosols in general in the fine print with methane where it's hard to find it, even if you're looking for it. And, yeah. Another good comment. Unfortunately, the IPCC is first and foremost a political organization that caters to the needs of oil-producing nations. And that's why they still can't use language like reduce the burning of fossil fuels. It's scandalous. And for all intents and purposes, the IPCC is there to, make you think that they're taking climate change seriously or doing something about it or, making some headway or making some progress, But really they are trying to facilitate business as usual for as long as possible while not doing anything about the problem. That's actually what they're there for, which is why it seems incongruous that there's, oil companies in the conversation with the IPCC. It seems, a little strange that COP27 is sponsored by Exxon, right? Or, things like that, or Coca-Cola or whatever. They're trying to make sure that business as usual can happen while making everybody think that they're actually doing something about a problem without changing anything drastically upon the planet. And this will be to the detriment of the people of the planet, of course. And, not just people. It ain't just people. But, certainly, nobody cares about the plants and the animals as long as you're getting your food, as long as you got some TV shows to watch, and as long as you got, clothes to buy and things to do, places to go. Who cares what animals die or what ecosystems die in the service of that consumption? Like, who cares? I'm fine. Everything's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. But when, those things start to go away and things get a little uncomfortable, then I imagine that people might start to pay attention. Osama, be well. Peace. Osama did send me something pretty good, which I'm going to read right now. Simultaneous crop failure, not this, but the next thing. Simultaneous crop failures in 1 year will be horrible but likely adaptable. Simultaneous crop failures over multiple years will likely not be. What must be done to avoid that? Asks Steve Austin. Somebody says degrowth eco-socialism with animal agriculture, biofuels, and commercial fishing brought to an end. Space regained for nature allowed and assisted to rewild. Food to be bolstered by precision fermentation on top of veganic horticulture and perennial grains. That's one person's idea. Somebody says so much agricultural land devoted to corn to feed cows. An obvious luxury. Hope genetic engineering can develop ever adaptable crops, inspire self-sufficiency. Okay. Somebody else says pay people more to work less and incentivize home and property owners to build food resilience in their communities. Subsidize local nurseries and farms when they improve local biodiversity and utilize restorative agriculture. Improve agricultural education and also mutual aid. How about, yeah. Nasila says switching to an agroforestry model on a large scale would be wise, but I don't know that there's time to get it all established before we see the effects of extreme climate disaster. Ding, 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 ding. I predict that we are going to, we're going to see a lot of agriculture move indoors or underground because they won't be able to, withstand the weather extremes outside. And I'm already utilizing this method here. My plants do pretty well indoors. I start and keep a lot of plants indoors now because when I put them outdoors, it goes hot, cold, 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 hot, 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 cold, back and forth. I have a lot of plants in pots so that I can move them out of the sun or into the sun, because it's just all over the place. The weather is just really all over the place. I dare not plant anything into the ground here anymore because I know what happens. It's just like you get 1 week of like super hot weather in the middle of winter and everything dies. Or vice versa. So I don't know. I don't know how to get around that. I do think that, permaculture and or, building, rewilding more resilient growing spaces, I think are key for sure. But I think also eliminating corporations from existence is also key. And I don't know, eliminating war. I mean, why don't we just start with the biggies? I mean, yeah, the biggies are growing food and trying to grow food where you live. And I think that you should probably get busy doing that. Um, Creative experiments as everything dies, then drive your SUV to Home Depot to get more. No, that's not what I do. That is not what I do. I actually grow everything from seed. I don't go and buy plant starters. I don't do all that kind of stuff. I often grow food from the food that I eat. Like I'm right now. I'm growing a bunch of trees. Um, I have some avocado trees going. I have an apple tree. I have a couple of tamarind trees. I'm trying to grow mango, nectarine, etc. But I'm growing all those things from seed. But that's probably what a lot of people do is plant a bunch of starters, they die, and yeah, right. Then they might drive their SUV to Home Depot to get more. Where are we? What are we looking at? Why are we looking at this? Anyways. And I also have lots of seeds. Osama sent me some pepper seeds. I grow peppers, you know, pretty much all the time. Um, but I just have not had the time to have like a garden, like a vegetable garden. This entire year has been kind of rough as far as time goes. And so I just really have not been able to get in the swing of it. But it's, getting to be about winter, time to plant some lettuces and some broccolis and some garlics. So I probably will do that. How do I know what climate zone I'm in? I'm in the, look on the climate zone. There's, you can just look at it. I think you can just Google the climate zone that you're in. But I have a general idea of what grows here and what doesn't. Luckily, I mean, we're quite warm. We're a Mediterranean climate, so lots of things will grow year round here. But we do have we have a bit of a colder season where you can grow like the lettuces. But again, we live in Southern California, so it's like you're growing lettuce, you're growing something, a cold weather vegetable, and all of a sudden you get a heat wave out of nowhere, and it's like 90 degrees in November or January. And like that happens all the time. So you've got something, kind of delicate growing, and you get this like wipeout week of a heat wave, and then, it's hard to recover from that. And it's hard to do anything about that. All right. Okay. I'm going to read this real quick. And where are we? I'm not going to show it on the screen. I'm just going to read it. This is from the guy that I'm Indica that I've been reading. Let's see. Ooh, it's starting to get late in the day, guys. Late in the day. Sorry. Okay. Real quick. America cannot win a land war in Asia, but they're still trying. America is trying to start a war with Russia and China at the same time. In The Princess Bride, a man playing a deadly game said, "Ha ha, you fool." He fell victim to one of the classic blunders, the most famous of which is never get involved in a land war in Asia. I thought this was received wisdom, but apparently not. Today, America is involved in not one, but two. Not one, not two, but three land wars in Asia, a real blunderbuss put in their own mouth. America is involved in Korea, still going on. Ukraine, ongoing, and Taiwan, getting going. One frozen war, one hot, one they're desperately trying to order. The United States is actively messing with three nuclear powers, two of them highly industrialized. America is encircling these countries with military bases, fomenting coups in and around them, imposing sanctions, white word for sieges, actively arming and training their enemies and openly calling for them. While North Korea has been a supine punching bag for decades, Russia and China are in America's weight class. The bully empire has finally picked on someone their own size, and they're about to F around and find out. Given that America has lost every war for decades to dudes and Toyota Hiluxes, they really shouldn't be effing around with China and Russia, let alone both at once. China makes trucks. Russia has oil, and neither of their explosive devices are improvised. Picking a fight with either would be a real war, and America is really not ready for a land war in Asia, let alone two. For decades, America has been able to hide the weaknesses of their war machine by dropping expensive bombs on poor people. But real war with real peer opponents is an entirely different beast. As Patrick Armstrong writes, I can't get two questions out of my mind. When was the last time the USA won a war? When was the last time U.S. trained troops fought effectively? The answer is that the last war America decisively won was World War II, and that was with USSR doing most of the work. The last time U.S. trained troops fought effectively was never. America keeps covering up the actual ignominy of the last war with potential glory of the next one. But if you look at the whole bloody record, it's not good. Ignominy, sorry. Like a broken record, however, the American war machine keeps going. Why wouldn't it? They're not destroying their country, and the money is all printed. The innovation of American empire has been making money by losing wars, looting their own treasury, and wrecking other countries in the earth. Their military is the single largest polluter. There is, in fact, more money in losing wars and dragging them out. For decades now, America has been fighting wars without consequence, picking on poor people that, I don't know, I lost part of this. This leads us today where, after a few boring decades torturing Muslims, they get to fight commies again. What fun. Now the chicken hawks are clucking about real war, which requires real mobilization, i.e. a draft, and real industrialization, none of which America is remotely ready for. If they continue on this blunderous path, America will F around and find out. Who are they effing with? America is not talking about bombing poor countries anymore, poor countries without functional air forces anymore. Russia is the largest country in the world with tons of natural resources and the state-owned industries to process them efficiently. China has the world's largest population, also has lots of natural resources, and is again much more efficiently industrialized. Both countries are able to marshal the most vital natural resources, which is young men, to go kill themselves. Both have some form of conscription, and Russia has been mobilizing men for over a year now. America, on the other hand, has a great propaganda arm but cannot effectively produce weapons or muster the bodies to hold them. As mentioned, they have no draft and have outsourced production so much that the head of Raytheon has said they cannot decouple from China. By the way, there's a story about the fact that we're running out of munitions to send to Ukraine. And we need more money. The Pentagon, we need more money. We're running out of munitions to send to Ukraine. Okay. America is also not talking about defending itself from these countries, but offensively encircling them with military bases and weaponry. America today is the definition of a paper tiger, and foolishly, they are out looking for fire. What will they find out? If this actually comes to war, what does that mean? Well, firstly, what does war mean? War is two things: mustering men and material, being willing to lose both in horrific numbers. So three things, none of which America has. America is quite simply writing checks their ass can't cash. Let's discuss in some detail the two line items, men and materiel. Men, the prime natural resource required for war is young men, and in this aspect, America is completely at a loss. America ended the draft after their destabilizing loss in Vietnam and has never mobilized its general population again. For decades, America has been attacking civilians elsewhere and calling it counterinsurgency. This has all got them quite confused about the real nature of war. Since Vietnam, America has an all-volunteer army. It draws from its nation of debt slaves with the promise of education and health care that should be their rights anyways. Many people in the military still live off food stamps because the huge budget mostly goes to private arms dealers, not privates. America talks about having a strong military, but all of their spending is really a measure of corruption and waste. America actually doesn't have many men at arms and no way to mobilize more without massive social instability. Generations of American politicians, journalists, and think tankers have grown up quite comfortably starting wars with no fear of ever fighting them, nor do they have to sacrifice their own children. These chicken hawks only fail upwards because no one is ever held accountable. The same people that started the last disastrous war are still in power. Henry Kissinger still hasn't checked into hell, and George W. Bush is somehow rehabilitated. And then there's all the columnists and failed generals and bloodthirsty bureaucrats that have only failed upwards. Indeed, the only people that get purged in the American establishment are those that are anti-war. These think tank commanders just keep thinking of bigger and bigger ways to fuck up, and why wouldn't they? The money's good and someone else is paying for it. America has been able to fight wars without many men because their attacks on Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. have been more unabated war crime than war. Let's pummel these people that barely can barely defend themselves. Yeah, winning, America. What a joke. America simply held down poor countries without air forces and brutally beat them up. This simply isn't how conflict with a peer country would go. An entire generation would have to see their peers go to war. With technology being equal, there's no way around it. There will be blood. This dim awareness is dawning somewhere within the military-industrial complex that they may have to raise a much larger army from the general population. As a recent report from the U.S. War College states, the Russia-Ukraine war is exposing significant vulnerabilities in the Army's strategic personnel depth and ability to withstand and replace casualties. Army theater medical planners may anticipate a sustained rate of roughly 3,600 casualties per day, ranging from those killed in action to those wounded in action or suffering disease or other non-battle injuries. With a 25% predicted replacement rate, the personnel system will require 800 new personnel each day. For context, the United States sustained about 50,000 casualties in 2 decades of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. In large-scale combat operations, the United States could experience that same number of casualties in 2 weeks. That paper continues, leading to the obvious conclusion: conscription. The U.S. Army is facing a dire combination of recruiting shortfall and a shrinking individual ready reserve. This recruiting shortfall, nearly 50% in the combat arms career management fields, is a longitudinal problem. Every infantry and army soldier we do not recruit today is a strategic mobilization asset we will not have in 2031. The individual ready reserve, which stood at 700,000 in 1973 and 450,000 in 1994, now stands at 76,000. Wow. These numbers cannot fill the existing gaps in the active force, let alone any casualty replacement or expansion during a large-scale combat operation. The implication is that the 1970s concept of an all-volunteer force has outlived its shelf life and does not align with the current operating environment. The technological revolution described below suggests this force has reached obsolescence. Large-scale combat operations troop requirements may well require a reconceptualization of the 1970s and 1980s volunteer force and a move towards partial conscription. By the way, there are also multiple articles coming out saying that all the army recruits are overweight and physically lacking in the ability to actually complete, army training. So there's that too. When you have a whole population of children that sit around and eat junk food and play video games all day and do that their entire childhood, you're going to get people who are ill-equipped to physically do much. As a recent Pentagon and this is backing up what I just said, 77% of young Americans would not qualify for military service without a waiver due to being overweight, using drugs, or having mental and physical health problems. Even if the young people of America were fit to serve, why would they want to? Whereas Taiwan and Ukraine are right next to China and Russia, these are simply not existential concerns for Americans. All the bullshit about democracy versus authoritarianism is fine and well for social media, but it's very different when you get a draft card. America staved off massive social unrest when they ended the draft, but it'll come right back if they restart it. There's really no way for America to raise an army required for a land war in Asia on multiple fronts, and the very attempt would cause war in their own streets. In contrast, China has a large standing army already, and at least the basic concept of conscription. Everyone has to be ready for service, though China simply doesn't go around starting wars. Russia also has a large standing army, significant amount of volunteers coming in, and has already proved able to mobilize from the general population for Ukraine. More to the point, Russian and Chinese people would want to mobilize if they were attacked on their own borders. America thinks their big cause. They write big checks to America thinks they're big because they write big checks to arms dealers, but this is mostly wastage and corruption, with proxy patsies doing the real fighting and dying. By threatening peer powers, America's propaganda mouthpieces are writing checks their asses simply can't cash. If they F around, they'll find out. Whew, this is getting a little long. Hopefully it's over soon because I have to go. The materiel, the prime artificial resource required for war is materiel, i.e. hot stuff to throw at each other. And America which has deindustrialized both itself and now Europe, simply can't make enough stuff anymore. Don't take my word for it. As the Empire's own Center for Strategic and International Study says, according to the results of a series of CSIS war games, the United States would likely run out of some munitions, such as long-range, precision-guided munitions, in less than 1 week in a Taiwan Strait conflict. America doesn't have enough ammunition to last a week against China, and if they want to make more, they have to ask their Chinese suppliers. Regarding the war they're already in, the U.S. and NATO have been vastly outproduced by Russia. Again, this is all in imperial reports if you get past the propaganda packaging. This, for example, from the New York Times. As a result of the push, Russia is now producing more ammunition than the United States and Europe. Overall, Kusti Salm, a senior Estonian defense ministry official, estimated that Russia's current ammunition production is 7 times greater than that of the West. Russia's production costs are also far lower than the West's, in part because Moscow is sacrificing safety and quality in its efforts to build weapons more cheaply. Mr. Salm said, for instance, it costs a Western country $5,000 to $6,000 to make a 155 millimeter artillery round, whereas it costs Russia about $600 to produce a comparable 152 millimeter artillery shell, he said. The safety and quality bit is just sour grapes. Western artillery shells are not $5,000 better. They're just produced in a more corrupt and inefficient way, outsourced to war profiteers. Western production lines cannot scale up and cost 10 times more if they do. It's a losing proposition, and it shows. Joe Biden himself said the U.S. is running low on ammunition. This is why they released widely illegal cluster bombs to poison supposedly Ukrainian soil for years. As the chair of NATO's military committee said, the bottom of the barrel is now visible. The Western military-industrial complex is fundamentally a grift and cannot keep up with the gruesome facts on the ground. Right now, the United States produces around 336,000 shells a year, according to the Pentagon, compared to the 2 million that their own intelligence says Russia is producing. The deficit may actually be much worse, and Russia is amping up industrial production of all things, not getting worse. Just look at manufacturing in general. Russia is reindustrializing while the USA is at best standing still and Europe is going backwards. And this is the manufacturing capacity, I guess, from or improvement in the last month of these nations. So you can see the European nations going down and USA in the middle, and Russia, Kazakhstan, Indonesia, Philippines, China, and Greece ramping up. Oh, you can't see that. Sorry. Excuse me. We're going to get through this. The Pentagon's big plan is to increase production to 1.2 million a year by 2025. But this is still less than Russia in 2023, and it's not like they'll stand still. And that's just one enemy the Americans are choosing to make. What about the Chinese or the North Koreans or Iran? What about them working together? And what about India? Just sitting this one out? How is America going to pick fights with all these people while deindustrializing its allies? What are they even talking about? They simply don't have the bullets to be shooting their mouth off like this. As the good old boys said, you're going to look pretty funny trying to eat corn on the cob with no effing teeth. Of course, you could just write off artillery as dumb bullets and pretend that wonder weapons, i.e. silver bullets, will win wars. America propaganda is obsessed with what the Nazis call Wunderwaffen. In Ukraine, we've been alternately told that the HIMARS, Patriot missiles, Leopard, Abrams tanks, cluster munitions, F-16s, or now ATACMs are going to win the war. But they didn't, did they? Western weapons are simply not that good when deployed against anything more sophisticated than a Toyota Hilux. And this all misses the point the Nazis missed too. 500 good tanks beat 5 great ones. Quantity is its own quality in war. When a tank depreciates in days or hours, who gives an S about frills? In World War II, the Soviets were able to produce a much higher quantity of good enough weaponry, and that, along with rivers of blood, won the thing. And in many cases, the Soviet weapons were higher quality as well. They invented the AK-47, after all, and the Katyusha, the first multiple rocket launcher. Western propaganda talks about Soviet-era weaponry dismissively, but F-16s and Abrams tanks are from the Soviet era. Even something like HIMARS is just a modern version of the Katyusha. What NATO is giving to Ukraine is mostly its old stuff, and it's not necessarily better because it's Western. Furthermore, new Russian technology is also damn good at being bad, of course. The Russians are innovating with drones, glide bombs, and hypersonic missiles. In the Ukraine war, modern Russian weapons are generally both better and much better integrated than the Frankenstein's monster of hand-me-downs that Ukraine has got. The fact is that in Ukraine alone, Western materiel is getting attrited much worse than Russian stuff. Like sanctions, destroying an army goes two ways. While Russia's materiel is certainly getting destroyed, so is the Western stuff, and the Russians are able to replenish theirs faster. U.S. politicians claim to have destroyed 50% of Russia's military for cheap, using Ukrainian lives, but this is just bullpucky. Sorry, I'm trying not to cuss. Russia is producing more than ever, whereas the West is at the bottom of the barrel in their own words. And now the West is trying to open another front against another industrialized power in China. This is nonsensical, especially since they need Chinese resources to attack China. Don't take my word for it. Ask war profiteer Greg Hayes of RTX, nay Raytheon. He said Raytheon has several thousand suppliers in China and decoupling is impossible. More than 95% of rare earth materials or metals come from or are processed in China. There is no alternative. Wow. What am I reading, Handel? I'm reading an article by a dude named on a website called Indica or Indy.ca. The fact is that Western economies and militaries are only big on paper. Most of their natural resources and production come from the rest of the world, and they've now sanctioned and scolded themselves into a corner. They're paying $5,000 more for a bullet and pretending like it's that much better, when in fact it's just corruption and waste and fraud. None of these delusions will or have survived contact with reality. These wonder weapons wouldn't even overcome the Taliban. How much more useless are they against people with equal or better weapons, air forces, and electronic warfare capability? America simply doesn't have the materiel capability to fight one war in Asia, let alone two or three. And as Madonna said, we are living in a material world, and I'm a material girl. Choosing violence, the option that often goes undiscussed about American foreign policy, would be simply effing off. Neither China nor Russia especially want to provoke America. They just don't want America effing around near their borders. One thing that people ignore is that the U.S. is nowhere near Ukraine or Taiwan, and its record of helping in other places is just a record of making things much worse. The truth is that the United States should have about as much involvement in China or Russia's border as Sri Lanka. That is to say, none at all. But delusional American elites simply can't live like that, like a normal country. So they're choosing a final paroxysm of violence. And of course, it could be final for everyone. These are, after all, nuclear powers that they're effing around with, and that's a terrible thing to find out. And so here they are, like the confident Sicilian in The Princess Bride. In the scene I discussed at the beginning, that man confidently blathers and scolds, so confident in his own wits, and then finally laughs at his opponent. The game is to guess which cup contains poison, and the Sicilian is completely sure he's got it right, but he was wrong, of course, and he died. Both cups contained poison, which his opponent had worked for years to develop an immunity to. This is the state of America blathering about war in Taiwan and Ukraine, while its opponents there have been industrializing for decades. America, meanwhile, has been in nothing but decline. This is neither the time nor the place for them to start a land war in Asia. It never is. But they seem determined. America simply cannot win a land war in Asia. Who can? But for some accursed reason, they're still trying. Yeah, that was an article written. Go to indi.ca. Indy.ca. Indica. indi.ca. Handle. And you will find it. That's it's on Substack or Medium or Substack. I don't know. One of those. Medium. It's on Medium. All right, guys. That is that. I went a little longer than I wanted to. Oh, so the best way you can support the show, and maybe you already know this, PayPal.me/Kevin Sandbloom, Venmo @Kevin Sandbloom, Cash App @Red Llama Music, and buymeacoffee.com/Black Bear News. If you like this show, being here every day, really helps to get the financial support. And I always appreciate it. Let's see. Don't know if I got any tips already. I'll check in with y'all. No. Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. Okay. Hold on one second. No, that's not what I wanted to open. Who knows where I'm at? I don't know where I'm at. Confused about what's going on. Okay. Rockfinners, thanks for hanging out. That was a good article. All right. Good to see you all today. And thanks, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow at the regular time of 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight. And until next time, peace. I think, if I could stop the show.